to solve equations. So first of all, let's do a little refresher. What's a multiplicative inverse? That's right, it's a number's reciprocal. Okay, so if I had the number 1/3, what is the multiplicative inverse of 1/3? It is 3/1. And remember when we did the properties, a number times its multiplicative inverse is 1. What if I had a negative 2/3? Its multiplicative inverse is, yep, negative 3/2. And a negative times a negative is a positive. That'd be 6/6, or just 1. Okay, that's what they're showing right here, the multiplicative inverse property. They're showing it with numbers and algebraically. So, if we have a number in example 1 that is a fraction coefficient, so the coefficient is the number in front, remember. If 3/5 is a fraction, we want this to be 1 here. How do you get rid of a fraction? You multiply by its multiplicative inverse. So I'm going to multiply by 5/3. To show you on the side the math that's involved in this, we're not worrying about the x, we want this to equal 3. 5 times 3 is 15, 3 times 5 is 15, which is 1, so that's a 1x there. But whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So right here it said the inverse of 3/5. We did the inverse of 3/5, multiply each side by the inverse of 3/5, it's 5/3. Now over here, how do you multiply a fraction times a whole number? So right now it's 5/3 times 15. How do we multiply a fraction by a whole number? You make the whole number a fraction by putting it over 1. And then you multiply straight across, and that is 75/3, which is 25. So x is 25. Now I want to show you one other way we could have multiplied those two fractions. It's the canceling method. Any numerator, which is the one on top, can cancel with any denominator, which is the one on bottom. Well, 5 and 3 don't have any common factors, but look, 3 and 15 have a common factor. What can go into both 3 and 15? 3. So over here you say 3 divided by 3 is 1, 15 divided by 3 is 5, and what is 5 times 5? It's 25. So the solution is 25. Okay, so we'll do one more right here. 6/11, how do I undo multiplying by 6/11? I divide by 6/11. You know you can't divide by a fraction. You multiply by its multiplicative inverse. Okay, so that is 1x or just x, and then it's 18/1. And instead of using my calculator and figuring out what 18 divided by 11 is, I'm going to use my canceling method. If you don't like the canceling method, you're going to multiply and then divide. 6 is the common factor between 18 and 6, so that's 3. 6 divided by 6 is 1, so 3 times 11 is 33. Okay, and to check it, it would be 6/11 times 33 over 1, right, equals question 18. And you can multiply and then divide, multiply straight across, or you can say what's the common factor between 11 and 33? 11. So 11 divided by 11 is 1, 33 divided by 11 is 3, 6 times 3 is 18. So it worked. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video right now, and then you're going to do example 2, and then come back and see how you did. Okay, so you should have paused it, and now we're going to check your solution. What did you multiply both sides by? It should have been a negative 13/7, which means x equals negative 52, and to do your check, you plug it back in for x. The negative I've just put on top now instead of out in front. It doesn't matter where it goes because a negative times a negative will be a positive. And I canceled because that's what I like to do. If you multiplied straight across, you had a big number over 13, and it still equaled not negative 28, just kidding, positive 28. Okay, so those were one-step equations with fractions. What if we had a two-step equation with a fraction in it? Okay, it's the same thing as we were doing before with two steps. So which one do we always undo first? Multiplication and division or addition and subtraction? That's right, we always undo addition or subtraction. So we're adding 3/4. How do you undo adding 3/4? You subtract 3/4. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So we're subtracting 3/4 from each side. Okay, so these cancel, and we were left with negative 7/12 x. On this side, how do we subtract fractions? They have to have what? A common denominator. So my common denominator is going to be 8. And how did we get from 2 to 8? We multiplied it by 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. So a half is the same as 4/8. Over here, how do we get from 4 to 8? We multiplied by 2. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, so we rewrote those using a least common denominator, your LCD. Now we're going to do the subtraction. This is the same as 4 plus negative 6, and they're all 8s, so I can add or subtract them. So it becomes a negative 2/8. Or I could have written negative 1/4. So I'm going to just take a little middle step here, and I'm going to say that that's the same as, well, right over here actually, negative 1/4. Okay, so now how do I get rid of negative 7/12? I have to multiply by its reciprocal, its multiplicative inverse, which is negative 12/7. Notice I always put the negative sign with the guy on top. So we multiply each side by the multiplicative inverse of negative 7/12, okay, which is negative 12/7. So over here I have 1, negative times negative is a positive 1. And I'm going to do my canceling. If you didn't, you'd have 12/28. I'm going to cancel because 4 and 12 have a common factor of 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. Negative 3 divided by 4, or sorry, negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. I like it when I say the answer there in the problem. Negative 1 times negative 3 is a positive 3. 1 times 7 is 7. If you hadn't canceled, I'm going to show you what that looks like over here now. So it was a negative 1/4 times negative 12/7. Let's say you didn't think about canceling, you multiplied straight across. You would have 12/28. Is that in simplest form? No, it's not in simplest form because they're both even. So let's say you thought the greatest common factor was 2, and you simplify that, and it becomes 6/14. And what do you notice? Both even. So you know they're divisible by 2 again, and that's equal to positive 3/7. Okay, so I'm going to give you a problem to do right here. It's 1/3 x plus 5/6 equals 7/9. It's a two-step equation. You're going to pause the video and try that on your own and then come back and watch the process. Okay, so you should have this on your paper right now. The first thing I need to do is subtract 5/6, and I'm left with 1/3 x on the left. On the right, I don't have a common denominator. I want to find the least common denominator, which is 18. If you did something bigger than 18, it's okay, but you're going to deal with bigger numbers now. So how did I go from 6 to 18? I times by 3. Whatever you do at the bottom, the denominator, you have to do the top, the numerator. So that's a negative 15/18. And on top, you multiply by 2. So that's 14/18. So this craziness actually isn't that bad. 14 plus negative 15 is negative 1, and the denominator never changes when we're adding or subtracting fractions. What is the reciprocal of 1/3? It's 3/1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3/1. So I'm left with x on the left, and on the right I have negative 3/18, which reduces to negative 1/6. So that's what you should have gotten. Okay, the last example is example 3, and it's a real-world problem, so let's talk about that right now. So it says, the height of a certain Norway spruce is 10 feet. If the tree height grows 2.5 feet per year, how long will it take the tree to reach a height of 25 feet? They very nicely set the problem up for us. So they're going to say the current height plus the growth rate times the number of years is the new height. So the current height was 10. The growth rate was 2.5 feet per year times the number of years, we don't know, equals the new height of 25. So we want to find the growth rate. So in order to do that, We're going to subtract 10. We have to get rid of 10. Now, they put the boxes in row format. If you don't like row format, you like columns, you could put it underneath and just ignore the boxes for now. Subtract 10 from each side. So we have 2 and 1/2 x equals 15. Now, before I write 2 and 1/2, that is not very nice. So I need to convert 2 and 1/2 as a fraction. So I'm going to do that down here to remind you how to convert a mixed number to a fraction. It goes around clockwise, and you do denominator times whole number plus numerator. So 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. And the denominator never changes. So 2 and 1/2 is the same as 5/2. So right here, instead of 2 and 1/2 x, I'm going to write 5/2 x. Now they're leaving me some room here to do the multiplying on each side, so I'll go ahead and just do that right now. Okay, so I rewrote my problem. Now what do I multiply? I multiply by the multiplicative inverse of 5/2, which is 2/5. I'm going to put that over 1 right now. 2/5. You know I like to cancel. This, of course, equals 1. It's 10 over 10, which is 1. And over here, 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 15 3 times. And 3 times 2 is 6. So the tree will be 25 feet tall after 6 years. And notice I had a word problem and a word answer. Okay, guys, that is it for your fraction notes. If you have some questions, see Mrs. Wyman. Otherwise, you're on to the assignment. Great job, guys.